Welcome to another Counselor Soapbox video. This is Drug Counseling, Part 7, Record Keeping and Ethics. Drug and alcohol counselors need to be aware of their professional and ethical responsibilities. One of those responsibilities is record keeping. Another is to be familiar with and follow the Alcohol and Other Drug Counselor Code of Ethics, and to be aware of ethical principles beyond those expressed in the Code of Ethics. Reports and record keeping. The ICNRC defines reports and record keeping as charting the results of assessment and treatment plan, writing reports, progress notes, discharge summaries, and other client-related data. TAP 21 includes reports and record keeping as part of the overall documentation duty. Documentation is product-oriented. It's an administrative function. Everything a counselor does for or with a client should be documented. Confidentiality must be protected. When writing notes, the counselor should consider the consequences of future releases. If you did not document it, how can others rely on it having been done? There are a number of things that must be documented. Was the client admitted to the program? What was the client's diagnosis? What did you and the client plan to do? And then what was done? Were other services utilized? You document screening and intake, assessment, the plan of care or treatment plan, progress notes, what referrals did you make, and why and when did the client leave the program? Writing monthly reports is an important part of a counselor's duties. The counselor may need to provide monthly reports to the referral source. This could be a report to probation, parole, the court, CPS, or an insurance company. This monthly reporting requirement may include writing letters or filling out employment or disability claims. In California, the ethical duties of the counselor have been codified. They revolve around a series of principles. Principle 1 is about counselor conduct. Conduct yourself in an honest and forthright manner. In securing your registration, be truthful. Do not misrepresent your credentials. Whatever asked, you should provide your ID, and you should not do any false advertising. Principle number 2 of the California Drug and Alcohol Counselor Uniform Code of Conduct deals with boundaries. While it's possible that a counselor and a former client might meet after the client leaves the program and become romantically involved, counselors should not engage in primary sexual relationships for at least 2 years after the client has terminated or left the program. There could be no abusive behavior. No business relationships, buying or selling, lending or borrowing money, should occur for at least 1 year after the client leaves the program. And a counselor should never harass or threaten a former client. There also can be no illegal drug use or dangerous alcohol use. That is, clients and counselors should not engage in any substance use together. Principle number 3 of the California Counselor's Uniform Code of Conduct for Drug and Alcohol Counselors deals with confidentiality. Counselors should not violate confidentiality of their clients except as required by law. They should maintain records of the services provided. Whenever requested, Counselors must provide clients access to their records as required by law. And violating any law relating to alcohol or drug counseling is also an ethical violation. Ethics in practice can be divided into three issues: scope of practice, what you're legally allowed to do; scope of competency, what you're competent or capable of doing; and other ethical issues, such as how does the counselor make decisions about whether this particular course of action is ethical or not. There's more to ethical behavior than simply what's contained in one code of ethics. Some of the other issues that counselors need to be aware of are scope of practice. Scopes can include practice, that's what the counselor is legally permitted to do, and competency, those things for which their training and experience has made the counselor good at doing. Scopes of practice can only be enlarged by the legislature, who changes what the counselor is allowed to do. Scopes of competency can be enlarged because the counselor gets additional training, experience, or supervision. Counselors should also be aware of ethical principles when it comes to fees. Generally, drug and alcohol counselors work for licensed or registered programs, and the fee structure should be well documented. Most drug and alcohol counselors do not work in a private practice. Also, counselors need to be aware of the challenges of dual, or increasingly we're calling it multiple, relationships. Dual relationships kind of implied romantic or personal relationships, but multiple relationships can also include business contacts, shopping at a store where a client works, for example. You wouldn't want to stop shopping there just because someone from that store came to be your client. On the other hand, if your client works there, they should not offer you their employee discount. That would be considered unethical. So counselors have to manage the contacts they have with clients when they run into them at 12-step meetings, at stores, and at religious institutions. There are some exceptions to confidentiality. One is for mandated reports. Counselors are mandated reporters. Anything which sounds like reasonably abuse of a child, an elderly, or disabled person has to be reported. Also, any threats to kill someone else would be a mandated report. Counselors also need to be alert for whenever a client would meet a criteria for an involuntary hold and report that to the appropriate authorities. That could include DTS, danger to self, if they're suicidal; DTO, danger to others, if they had a plan to kill or seriously injure others; and what we call GD, gravely disabled, when the client is so impaired that they're unable to provide for their own care. Counselors also should be aware of HIPAA and 42 CFR Part B regulations governing confidentiality when there is no exception in the law for it. Counseling depends on a good relationship between the counselor and the client. But when creating these relationships, counselors have to be careful to have good boundaries. You have to be constantly alert to the difference between a boundary and building a wall which prevents contact with the client. What's ahead for the Counselor's Soapbox video channel? More in our Learning About Drug Counseling series, more drug education videos, and a series on mental health and wellness. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button directly below. For more information, please visit the Counselorssoapbox.com blog, where you will find articles on mental health, substance abuse, and having a happy life. The David Joel Miller fiction and nonfiction books are available on Amazon.